Here we are in Home Grove. I just happened to notice when I was walking out today, it's late in the afternoon, the light's low. But the thing I noticed on some of these trees is the size of the leaves and the flush. You can see these leaves, that's a Valencia, which are not generally known for having large leaves, but you can see the flush. The leaves are extremely well developed. That means that they're quite healthy and have no nutrient deficiencies at all. So when the psyllids attack the new flush and they begin to oviposit and the pupae hatch, then the entomologists believe that if there's a lot of pressure from the psyllids, especially hot psyllids that have HOB in them, then the new shoot will be infected more heavily with HOB and its development will be impaired. So we're not spraying anything, and I don't know if you can see it on this flush. On the tip of one of those leaves is actually a Tamarixia wasp sitting there, and so when the flush first comes out, it is attacked heavily in the grove here, but the Tamarixias are pretty Johnny on the spot, and you get normal shoot development. They take care of the pupa of the psyllid fairly early, and you get a little bit of dimpling of these leaf tips. But that's about it. The shoot is coming out normal and not showing any effects of HOB. So again, the reason why you have to control psyllids when your trees are already infected is to try to give the new flush a chance to grow out before the bacteria colonize it to the point that it can't function properly. But in this case, these shoots are growing out normally. And you don't see any HOB symptoms or effects on them at all, even though when you look at a new shoot, there's psyllids on it. Just going to take another one of our walks through here. Again, these are Valencias. And we are in the end of September, or middle of September, I guess. And so we're still growing. We haven't begun to go dormant yet. This is probably the last major flush. The nice thing about the controlled release fertilizer program as opposed to the spraying foliar nutritionals is the foliar nutritionals, you have to hit new leaves in order for it to be absorbed. The foliar nutritionals that you spray on an old green leaf just roll right off because the waxy cuticle is so thick. So you have to hit these young bright green leaves before they have a chance to develop as thick a wax cuticle. And if your timing is perfect and you spray them as they're beginning to develop and expand so you can feed them, they'll go ahead and grow out normally like these shoots are doing here. But if you notice, there's no fruit on the ground underneath these trees, none whatsoever. So all the fruit on here, as you would expect with a healthy tree, is developing normally. So again, these are the Valencias. Crop is showing up very nicely now. Even with the PFD, we have a pretty good crop. Here we are in our navel row. Trees are still flushing to some extent. They were a little ahead of the Valencias, so there's not as much flush on them. But again, the leaves that are coming out are developing quite well. Those are big leaves, which indicates that they're really not having any problems at all. The leaves look normal, healthy, well-developed size. So even though the psyllids are pounding the flush when they first come out, the Tamarixias jump on them quickly enough so that the leaves can continue their development out. So we do have psyllids, and you have to get used to seeing them. but if you just trust the program, it tends to turn out okay. This is the kind of flush we're getting on our HLB infected trees. Slow release fertilizer and no foliar sprays of any kind for anything in 4 years. And let me just say a word about how we discovered this slow release program. It was totally by accident, without any kind of suspicion or prior indication that something was going to happen. But basically what we have here is just a small planting, and when the trees were young, we were treating them for HLB in every way we could, and they were getting infected and they looked poor. But everybody uses control release fertilizer these days on resets. It's pretty much become a standard practice. All we did was we never stopped using it. So we started when the trees were young like these, and we just kept putting it on simply because it's only a small planting, and we just continued to buy the bags of Citrablend and put it on the trees by hand. Till last year they got their first machine app earlier in the spring. But basically we just kept fertilizing in that way, and all of a sudden the trees that were sickly and poor and stunted and covered with HLB symptoms started looking like this. And we did absolutely nothing to help them along. They've done this entirely on their own. So it's a welcome discovery, and we've been watching this for a number of years just to make sure that they weren't going to collapse, or the natural control of the psyllids would break down and all of a sudden they'd go backwards. But we just don't see it. They just keep looking better and better, and again, we probably could be spraying some of these varieties with greasy spot to help them along, for greasy spot and other pests to help them along. But we're just going to see what happens here. And for right now, it's a small planting, and it's turning out to be extremely interesting.